right, everybody, let's get up and move because we are live with the community and we are going to be dancing all through this amazing community call today. So it is September 20th. This is the September Power Platform Community Call. We are so excited to have amazing presenters and some fun content ready for you. Let's take a look at what we're going to see today. So we're going to have the latest updates and news on the Power Platform. We're going to talk about some upcoming events in the community. There's a little something coming up in the next couple of weeks we might all know about and be excited about. We're going to have our group picture time with Together Mode, and then we're going to have 3 all-star presenters of the day. We're going to start with Norm Young, who's going to cover managing dynamics locked fields using Power Automate and adaptive cards in Microsoft Teams. And then Mary Myers is going to cover bringing ChatGPT to your enterprise resource planning with Power Automate. And we had a little slight change at the end here. Dian's coming in and she's going to cover creating content with D365 PVA and Power Automate, which is a digital hat trick. So woo! Get ready to throw those hats out on the ice. So let's first talk about an opportunity for you. This is your community call, so we absolutely welcome any and all of you to present just like our amazing community contributors are today. Now, don't overthink it, everybody. This is absolutely an easy opportunity, and do not need to show how to, make time travel possible with a flux capacitor. If you got a favorite feature, you got a favorite sample that you want to show off, you got a cool tip, trick, or technique that you'd like to share with the community, all of that is A-OK. We invite you to fill out the form, aak.ms/community/request/demo. We will reach out to you, and if you've never presented before, but you're really wanting to try, let us know that too. We can buddy you up with someone in the community, whether it be an MVP, a member of the team, member of Microsoft, and you'll work on it together, present it together, and it'll be fantastic. So please do not hesitate. We welcome each and every one of you to show off the amazing passion that you have for the community. All right, well, let's get into some news. So we're going to start out with Jocelyn on an update for connectors.
Hello, everybody. So we are at, as always, more connectors now than we were at last month. We are now at over 1,000, obviously, and we're now at 1065 with more connectors being made by independent publishers, community members like you folks, that have been made by Microsoft. Also, for some of you folks who are going to be joining us at MPPC in Vegas, we have another connectors related session. Super excited, just got added last minute. This is going to be specifically from that admin and security persona. So how can you manage your enterprise data at scale and effectively while ensuring the safest environments possible? In case you guys aren't going to be able to come to MPPC, no worries whatsoever. The Connectors Labs call will be holding a specific What You Missed at MPPC session the following week. So please go ahead and scan that QR code where you can debrief with myself about everything you missed in the world of connectors. If you're interested in getting started, visit our GitHub link and feel free to connect with me. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. Well, let's tune in to some more news with April Dunham.
Yeah, lots of news to cover here and updates. So the Power Apps homepage is now generally available in every US environment with the expanded Copilot access. So if you have a US environment, you have access to this new homepage to do all of your Copilot awesomeness there. We also have some updates to modernization and theming inside of Power Apps. So there's a brand new table control, a modern table control that's really cool, and updates to the text and date picker control also. Process mining in Power Automate is generally available as well. So all of the process mining capabilities are GA, which is great. So you should go check that out. And Maker Copilot for Power Pages are now live. So you have form generation, page creation, theme generation. It's all there. If you missed it, we did have Priya from the Power Pages team demo all of that Copilot awesomeness for Power Pages on our hackathon session the other day. So you should definitely check that out for more information on that. But that's not all. We also have some new samples to cover too for the Power Platform repo. So with that, we have a glass morphism sandbox from Keith Atherton. Really cool sample there showing how you can create kind of like a blur effect with transparency using an HTML text control inside of Power Apps. So a really cool sample to check out to kind of up your style game in your Power Apps there. And we also have a sample for SharePoint My Tools from Alex Clark, which is kind of a proof of concept Power Apps solution that shows how you can embed Power Apps inside of a SharePoint page as a web part. So really cool solution there to integrate and have a better together story with SharePoint and Power Apps. All right, but that's not all. I briefly mentioned the hackathon earlier and how we had a great session the other day with Priya on the Power Pages Copilot capability, and we have more to come. The hackathon here, Power Platform AI Hack Together, is in full force. It's going on until the 28th, so you still have plenty of time to register if you want to get involved. We have opportunities to win some great prizes like digital badges and different Power Platform swag, t-shirts and socks and all that, and gift cards. So it's a really fun event. You can hack by yourself. You can hack with a group of up to 3 people. Have fun, learn about all these Power Platform AI tools and co-pilots and all of that. We have 2 sessions going on this week. So one actually immediately after this call. So if you want to continue the fun, you can learn how to get started with AI Builder in the Power Platform with Gomo from the Power Platform Advocacy team and Ashish Bhatia, who's going to show all the AI goodness that we have in AI Builder. And then we have one tomorrow as well with Daniel Laskowitz from the Power Platform Advocacy team and Robin Rosengren, who's going to show how you can integrate Azure OpenAI service with the Power Platform to extend your solutions and add even more AI capability into your solutions. So you can go to aka.ms/hack together /Power Platform-AI to get all the information about these sessions and how to join and how to register. So make sure to register if you want to be involved, and we love to see what you're going to bring to the table for the hack.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, April. That was a lot of cool information. We are so excited. So plenty of time left for the hack, everybody. So get involved there. Now, if you're looking a little bit more long-term on those samples and you want to get involved and understand how to use that hub of gets or get of hubs, what is that? Hugo Bernier, tell me more.
Hey, we have this thing called Sharing is Caring, where we'll help you get started contributing to the community. So we have first-time contributor session where we show you how to do a GitHub pull request to documentation. We also have the Power Platform sample contributors, which is, I think it's on our calendar. If you go to aka.ms/sharing is caring, you can sign up and you can actually learn how to submit a Power Platform sample, the same samples that April just covered. We also have a few sessions called Writing for the Web, how to create documentation, setting up your SharePoint framework developer workstation, and more. You can find out again at aka.ms/sharing is caring with a bunch of dashes between the words. But that's not it. Once you've contributed to the samples, something special happens. David, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Hugo. So we have our recognition program. Woo, pumpkins! So we are excited because we got some new badges coming out. This is a recognition program set up to recognize you formally and officially for all the amazing things that you're doing. It's powered by Credly. It is absolutely free to join. We cover all the costs with the Credly badges, and we got some exciting thematic things coming up. Like you see that pumpkin spice, a lot of commits. Everybody's getting all PSL crazy right now. So go get your badge. You can get it all the way from September through December. And the Hacktoberfest is coming up in October. And then, of course, we've got some other fun badges coming up. We'll have our season of Getting coming back and a number of other repos that are going to be opting in for some more badges. So it's absolutely free to get involved. Go register aka.ms/community/recognition. Now, do we got some events coming up? I think we do. We have the 365 EduCon coming up in Chicago at the end of October into November. So definitely check that out. And I think there's a little something called the Power Platform Conference coming up here in a couple weeks in October. Everybody hear about this? I think we all heard about it. We are so excited. There is still time to register, though. It is going to be epic. Epic. Wait for it, epic. So definitely go get registered for that if you can. But that's not all. We've got so many other amazing community events coming up. Absolutely go check some of these out. I put all the links in the chat for all of these events. You'll be able to check them out later on community days as well. So they should all be there, aka.ms/community days. You want to get yours listed? Absolutely no problem. Go do that as well. We want to make sure that all the amazing events and all of you that are putting on these events are able to amplify the events that you're putting on, because we appreciate it for all that you're doing. So the time has come. Picture time. So come on and turn on those beautiful cameras of yours, and I will set the together mode here to together mode, and we will get that moved over. All right, there we go. Everybody's looking great. Let me set up. There we go. Move that off screen. All right,
David, are matching.
We are. Yeah, look at that. So I got a sweater on. He's got a t-shirt on. So
Yeah, we
just
called
need
each
someone to get a
other.
tank top on. Yeah, just if somebody can get an orange tank top, that'd be great. All right, I think we got a couple more seats. We got a feline in the room. Michael is looking very comfortable. Fantastic. Okay. All right, everybody, let's wave to the community. Show them how amazing you are. We got a bear up there. We are an inclusive community. We invite everybody. Awesome. Looking fantastic. Great to see everybody here today. All right. Coolio. Okay. Let's get cracking on our amazing presenters. So we're going to begin with Norm on the topic managing dynamics locked fields using Power Automate and adaptive cards in Microsoft Teams. Norm, you want to take over the screen and take it away?
Thank you so much, David. It's great to be back. I also say that it's also hard to come in behind you with the amount of energy that you bring to these calls. It's appreciated. And I always learn something. And today what I learned is PSL, which I didn't even know was an acronym, Pumpkin Spice Life. So thanks for sharing that. So what are we talking about here today? We're talking about managing locked fields and dynamics, but this also extends out into Dataverse, and we're going to use Power Automate and adaptive cards in a possible solution or a different type of approach. It's nice to be here again. My name's Norm Young. I'm a Microsoft MVP out of Canada. I'm kind of between Toronto and Niagara Falls to give you a reference point. I'm a senior strategic consultant at AvePoint. When it comes to tech, I like Dataverse. I like model-driven apps. Also like Microsoft lists and SharePoint and most things to do with Power Automate and adaptive cards. Again, nice to be here. It's always great to come to these sessions, not just to hear the energy of David and all of the news updates from the different stakeholders and members, but to learn what other people are doing, to get validation of the types of things that you work on as well in my own work. So it's great to be here. So thanks for taking the time to be on the call and have listened to what we're doing, what we're talking about. And so today we're talking about locked fields in Dynamics and model-driven apps. And at my work, we have a very manual process where a number of fields inside of our Dynamics instance are locked, and a user cannot change them without a manual request to get them changed. And so it's very time-consuming, and the question was posed to myself and others, can we streamline the process without making significant changes inside of Dynamics? And the question was, yes, we could. One of the approaches that we could take is to use Power Automate and adaptive cards, where we could give the users a mechanism to request a change for multiple fields in a table, have an approval process, let them change the fields programmatically using Power Automate, and then notifications that can be passed around and acted upon inside of Microsoft Teams. So to give a visual, these are what locked fields are in a Dynamics or a Dataverse experience. On the left image, you can see that I've highlighted number of employees, and there's a little lock icon. These are fields that the particular user cannot edit. They can only view them. On the right-hand side, you can see the technical implementation of that form in that field. You can see that it's been set to read-only. And so in our case, you need that manager approval to make that change to the record, because it's key to the business function, and changing those attributes can be contrary to some of the outcomes that we're doing. Technical implementation is just the form field in a model-driven app is set to read-only. So let's start at the end. Let's show what this experience looks like in a demo example. So we're going to start, and the persona that we're seeing on the screen is I'm the user, and I'm in my model-driven app, and I can see 3 locked fields: owner, stage, number of employees. I can't change them. So the solution will have me going up into Flow, initiating the workflow from the user perspective. And then this in turn will send our first adaptive card to the user. And then they can see the account that we're talking about, they can see the current value, and more importantly, they can make the request to change them. So I can change the account stage to prospect. I can change the number of employees to 6,000. I can assign a new owner, and I can put in some instructions for the person who will be approving or reviewing the request. There was a link in the adaptive card to come back to the record for convenience. And then finally, the request change button, which will send off and start that approval process. I get a little confirmation when I've submitted an action on the card. So let's switch personas now, and let's become the manager or the person who's approving. And we're dynamically looking this up in the background. So I get the title of the card that tells me what we're looking at. I get the information about what we're talking about. I can see the current value and the proposed values, and then I have comments to understand any type of instructions that the user might have. Again, I have that quick link that's being dynamically generated through the request using Power Automate expressions. I can view that record. I can enter in comments that I might want to provide back to the user. And then finally, I have the ability to approve or reject the request. And when I do something like approve, it's kicking off all those other types of actions that you'd expect to see inside of Power Automate. So again, there's my transaction receipt, if you will, that something has happened. And then I jump back as my user and I get the confirmation that it's been approved. Here are the new values that have been updated. And if I want to click back into the record, I can confirm that those values were changed. So in the previous working scenario, this would have been emails requesting approval, approving the approval or rejecting, and then asking someone with the right permissions to make the change. So now this is happening in one more streamlined, almost seamless experience where we're removing some of those manual steps out of the way. And so what did that flow look like behind the scenes that gave us like that end user experience? There's a lot of expressions, dynamic data, and of course the adaptive cards. But basically what we're doing is we're going to get the change details from the user and capture the rationale for the changes. We'll send all of those details over to the approval or the manager or the approval process. And again, if it's approved, let's update those fields on behalf of the users and send a message saying it's approved. If it's not approved, just say, sorry, this isn't going to work. So we spend a lot of time building up expressions and using dynamic data to create those links of convenience for the users. And then finally, we'll build out adaptive cards for user input, manager approvals, and finally the messaging. So the first card that we saw was to get the change details. This is the one that is sent to the user when they start that process. You know, first time we looked at this, we were like, oh, let's have a flow for each field that might change. And it's like, no way, that's just going to be too overwhelming for the user. So it's one flow, and then they can add the different fields that they may or may not want to change. And there's logic to check all of that. But the first thing, we need to provide context. We're talking about Microsoft Teams. Teams can be overwhelming with the amount of messages that you get. So it sounds so basic, but first point, what process are we asking our users to respond to? Give it a title, change locked fields. Number two, who are we talking about? So I'll put the account name, the table that it applies to, the account, and I'll give some context to that account, like the account number, the owner, the status, things that are important to my users for them to make sense of why they've been asked to look at this. I'll show them the current values, and then they can set their proposed values. So they, make sure that they're actually making the changes that they expect. Comments, so important because there's always edge cases. Things are not always black and white in the real business world. So instructions to help the approver understand why. And then finally, the view record, which is that link of convenience to go back to the account if they need to double check something. And then finally, start the approval by requesting the change. Our second adaptive card that we saw in the demo was to send those change details to the approver. And so the approver is always dynamically looked up. So I go to one of the user tables, find out who the manager is, send that request over there. And again, the manager, just like the user, could be overwhelmed with messaging in Teams. So what are we looking at? We're looking at the change locked fields request. Who are we talking about? The customer, the information, showing them the before values and the after values. Give them, as an approver, opportunity to send instructions, feedback, and so on to the user with the view record link, that convenient link, and then finally the approve and the reject request. And both of those buttons can take separate actions. So inside of the flow, when the approver says, approve or eject, this is at a high level what happens. In the yes branch, we look at what changed in the account stage, and then we make those changes. Same thing with the employees changed and the owner changed. And there's different logic and conditions that apply, but finally they get the message back saying, yes, it was approved and the values were changed. And opposite, it's denied and no changes were set. So adaptive cards. First time I looked at an adaptive card, I couldn't believe that I would have been expected to write JSON. I don't really know what JSON is, to be quite frank. I'm more of a maker. I don't have a background in development for me to know and understand these things. So the adaptive cards.io designer site, which is what we see on the screen right now, makes it so much easier to have a drag and drop experience where you can design, draw a card and allow you to set properties on those different elements. First time I got started, I used a sample and I just, tweak things to suit my needs. And then with a little bit of time and experience, I can now create them from a blank sample. But even as someone who's not a developer, I'm still able to create cards that are engaging for the users, they convey information, and they're actionable. And that's the important thing for the user experience. One of the things that I want to impress upon you is that the JSON may seem like a barrier if you had to read it, develop it, write it, so on. But the designer removes that barrier. And as you're designing out your cards, inevitably, you're going to want to add dynamic data. Create a placeholder for that dynamic data. I use an @ symbol. You could use whatever you want, but don't let the progress of developing a card get hindered by your ability to know how or to put in the dynamic data. So let's take a look at how building an adaptive card can look. And so we're looking at this, the requester card, and that's what we have on the screen right now. So let's play the video. And this is, in full transparency, this is done at 2x speed. I'm not the fastest typist. I'm not the fastest person with a mouse, but we're in the designer. I've selected my host app to be Microsoft Teams. I've set the schema version, and now I'm just going to start drawing, if you will, dragging and dropping all of the different components to make a card that I think is engaging and conveys the right information. And that will eventually have the ability to take action. So you see, as I drag over something like a text field, I'm able to set properties. I can make the size, what I want, and it's all relative. It's not like pixel sizes. It's not like font sizes. It's make it extra large, change the color, make it an accent color or a warning color. Like it's stripped down functionality compared to what you're used to in like a SharePoint or a web designer or something like that. And that's what makes them adaptive to these different platforms, whether it's Teams, a bot, or email. You can write the code once and essentially move it around to other areas. And so here I'm doing something that I think is very important. I'm creating a placeholder. And in my example, I'm using an @ symbol and then the account name. And it's a placeholder because I know that when I copy the JSON code from the designer and I move it into Power Automate, I need to update those items inside of Power Automate. You could do anything you want. Just I needed some visual reference for myself. And so my tip is use an @ symbol. Create that placeholder. So there's a lot of formatting. I'm trying to make it look pretty. I've got an image. I created column sets. Now I'm adding a fact set, and a fact set is just like you think. It's just like a bulleted list of values. And so this is what's going to provide some of that context to my user. Again, I'll put in an account number as a label, and then the @ symbol account number for the dynamic data that I'm going to need to replace when I come into Power Automate. And the Power Automate piece, I think, is probably harder than developing the adaptive card piece. I feel pretty comfortable in Power Automate and spend a lot of my time in there. But when it comes to updating those values that are in the JSON code in Power Automate, it's not the most user-friendly experience. So these placeholders really help. And so here we are. We're laying out the card now. I've got the contextual information about the account number, the owner status, and so on. And so now I'm creating inputs. And now we have to do things like including an ID for the input. So I'm doing an account stage. I gave it a name. And now you'll see that I'm going to start populating choices. Current is one. I'll go to the next one. And so in that drop-down menu box that we saw at the first demo, we have to manually put in each value that might be there. Those values, in turn, match what's inside of the account stage account record. And then you have to do that manually. Like there's no connecting an adaptive card to that Dataverse record that I'm aware of. So you can't dynamically look up these types of choice values. You have to program them in, and then you have to account for what the user selects in the adaptive cards to what's in Dataverse inside of your Power Automate routine. And we'll see that as well. So we've got that input. Now we're putting in the number of employees. I'm using colors to differentiate like a current value versus an input value. I'll put in a text box. I will give instructions to the user. I'm trying to have a training list experience. I've done a number of these, but I still make mistakes and have to go back. And you probably may have seen one right there. I had to go back and update the drop-down menu box to give the right instructions. And now I'm making sure everything's right. Again, you do this all the time, and you're not immune to making user errors, and that's what's happening here. But we'll get past this. This is not a big deal. I'll provide a section for the owner. I'll format it the way I want. I'll put in that text box for input. One of the things that's kind of it's too bad about adaptive cards, but I'm not aware of any way where I can have email validation or a person lookup like we might have inside of Dataverse Dynamics or like a SharePoint list where it can resolve that name. There's no connection to that that technology that does that validation. So this is one of the drawbacks to the solution, is that if it's not an email address and it's not the right email address, I have no way of validating that at the point of user input inside of the adaptive card. And if someone knows a way to do that, please let me know in the chat, because I'm always looking to improve these things. So finally, we're putting in our last little section. This would be the user comments. And you see that I'm putting those IDs in. Doesn't seem that important right now, but it will when we go into preview mode. And so we've got all of that. Now we need some buttons. So I'll find the right section to highlight. We'll add an action. We'll have an open URL, and then we'll put in our link to the record, update that. And then the next one. And the next one's the most important one for any type of approval or action where you're going to take that feedback and use it inside of Power Automate, and that's a submit button. And when you do the submit button, what it's going to do is send data back to the calling application. So you'll see that I'm manually typing in some data now that'll get returned. So I'm doing something called the user action. I just made that up, and that it's updated. So it looks good. I think at this point, we'll put it into preview mode. I can see all of my values in the drop-down menu list. I can put in a number of employees. I can put in a new owner. I can add comments. And then if I click the view record button, it'll say what it would do. And then here's the important part. This is the data that gets sent back. And it's the data that gets sent back that's most important when we get inside of our flow. Okay, so that was kind of the easy part, even though it might be new for a lot of us. The hard part now is to take that JSON code, and it's significant, and put it into our Power Automate. So I'm going to copy the payload. I'm going to come into my flow, and I'm just going to add another adaptive card action. So in this case, I'm using Teams, post an adaptive card, and wait for a response. It's very much like an approval. And you have the ability to send it as the flow bot. So think of a one-on-one chat. You could put it in a channel. Think of a conversation. And so here's the part where I'm like, I could never write all this. Look at you. You didn't have to know what was in there in all that code. You just needed to know that the scroll bar was this big because there's this much stuff. And it's great if you can read and write that, but not all makers or citizen developers or business technologists can. So what I'm doing now is remember those placeholders where I said like use that @ symbol? And now I'm going through and I'm finding all of those instances where I need to change from a static value to a dynamic value. And this is the power of Power Automate, where I can get all of that data that I've retrieved and start using it inside of this adaptive card. But you'll notice you can almost get dizzy from scrolling up, scrolling down, scrolling up, scrolling down. There's not an easy way of doing this. I'll use things like expressions to move that through. So I'm just going to scroll ahead because, again, it can be a very dizzying exercise to see me scrolling up and down. The hard work is not in the adaptive card development. It is, knowing and getting the right data to plug into your card. And having those placeholders and that list of things that you're going to include for contextual data is so important. So I'm putting in my final URL to go back to the card, and then I'll have a final call out to my user who is going to receive the card, and we go from there. So I've just scrolled through that piece. No errors, but that's the hard part. It's like wiring it all up. Okay, getting close on time. Let's look at some of the key actions to understand what's required in doing all of this. Look at this list rows for account. Here's another thing that I would never know how to write. So I use tools like Fetch XML Builder to help build out those queries. I can build a query in that tool and then copy in all those parameters to make it easy for me to do that. I use things like dynamically building that link over to Dynamics. I use that list rows model-driven apps, and I take that data and I can dynamically build out a link to that particular record. And it was hard to build the first time, but it saves my users so much work and time having to log into Dynamics, find the record, remember all the things that they need to. Now I can just press a button and go, excuse me. I need to zoom back because that was a very important piece and I wasn't talking fast enough. You'll see that on this compose action, I'm getting the feedback from the adaptive card. So when someone has requested requested the change, the feedback has to be captured and comes back. You don't get dynamic output from the adaptive card action in Teams. So you have to capture, compose it, do whatever. And now I'm going through and I'm requesting those changes. I'm almost done, David, so we're almost there. So now I'm going to capture that data and you can see it again. It's the body data that comes from it. And it's all of that data that gets sent back from clicking that button that we saw in the adaptive cards designer. So now I'm evaluating the changes inside of the account stage. And you remember I said that each choice in the choice column had to be manually evaluated. This is what we're seeing here. So in the case where the value equals past, update the row, set it to past, things like that. Almost there. You can scroll through some of this. We'll evaluate if the employees change. We'll make the necessary change there. We'll evaluate if the owner changed. We'll make the changes there. And then finally, if everything has gone well, free of error and so on, we will send that final notification back to the user to say, hey, your changes have been approved and you're good to go. If it was rejected, we send them a message back. And then hopefully the approver has put in some meaningful comments for them to understand why it was rejected. And that's the flow. Not the most straightforward one for a new maker, but it's one that I think people with patience can build up to help their users simplify some of their processes. So my call to action to you is, I know most people on this call are very capable with technology, but the users that they support, that they represent, they may not know that these things are possible. So my call to action to you is to help your users find those manual and mundane tasks and try and automate them using things like Power Automate. Consider using adaptive cards for those situations where you can't have those user dialogues inside of an application. We have things like learning about adaptive cards on the Learn site. We have samples that are amazing to use. The designer, which we looked at briefly, really good. And it's never too late to learn more about Power Automate. And again, the samples. See what other people have done, learn from others, more importantly, validate some of the work that you've done. Thank you all so much for taking time today to listen to my spiel about Power Automate, adaptive cards, and how they can be used to manage logged fields. If you want to keep the conversation going, let's hook up on my website or LinkedIn or Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it nowadays. And David, thank you so much, and back to you.
Thank you, Norm. Really great stuff there. I know there's a lot of information we packed into that, so really appreciate it. In the interest of time, we're going to move on to Mary. Mary, if you want to take on over, she's going to cover bringing ChatGPT to your enterprise resource planning with Power Automate. All right,
Thanks,
we can
David.
see. There we go.
There we
Yep,
go.
now we can hear you.
Yep, I was trying to say hello. Yeah, thanks everyone. Great session there, Norm. So today we're going to talk about ChatGPT for your enterprise resource planning. And that'll make a little bit more sense as we get going here. So first and foremost, let's talk about what we're going to talk about. So let me find my little thing here. Okay, first, our agenda. This is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to first talk about what it's like to create a custom connector for ChatGPT inside of Power Automate, right? So that would be, using that as a connector. So if we're familiar with Power Automate, that means we can take data, or essentially a prompt, right? Create some type of, in an app or in a flow, some type of response that we then want to run through like a traditional ChatGPT. So you can create a custom connector for that. We're going to look at how to use that in a flow. And then we're also going to briefly talk about Azure OpenAI AI, but I do have another slight modification that I found out prior to this session. And we're also going to take a look at the new Power Automate connector inside of ChatGPT, right? So I think that'll be a super cool demo that we will get here to quickly. So for any of those that don't know me, my name is Mary Myers. I'm so excited to be here today. Thanks for having me. I got started in the tech space not that terribly long ago in 2018. Prior to that, I was like a super end user in F&O, which is where my ERP or enterprise resource planning experience comes from. And so I've got my background comes from that dynamic side of things, but then became super obsessed with the Power Platform after going through an app in a day scenario and realized how much we could do to automate and integrate our processes with Dynamics. So that's what I became super obsessed with. And then I'm also a Microsoft MVP. And then over the course of the years, right, I went kind of from this app in a day to now I run my own company creating apps and solutions all day long. So I have a lot of fun. That's what I say, basically. All right. Okay. So this is what we're going to talk about today. So first, let's discuss what it would mean to create a custom connector for ChatGPT inside of Power Automate. Let's talk about why, right? So what does that mean first? The reason we need to do that is if you, go and search for your list of connectors inside of Power Automate, you're not going to see a ChatGPT one there, right? That means that we have to create a custom connector for it so that we can use it inside of Power Automate. There are a couple of things that we need to go ahead and have established first. So the first thing is that you need to have the $20 account. So you have to have an upgraded ChatGPT account, and then you also need to have this developer account. So if you go to this platform account, and I just threw $20. You just have to have some type of credit on that account as well, right? Because whenever you're these API calls, unfortunately, I will say they are not free. There is a very small charge for them, depending on kind of what application you put them in. But for me, when I'm testing, I don't know, I've not had very much usage on it, so it's not that much. But you do have to have some of some of those requirements set up ahead of time, so that essentially you can get your API ready for use to create a custom connector inside of this. Inside of Power Automate. So these are the requirements that you start with. Then I think this is probably part of what April was talking about, is that there's this new screen for Power Apps, because then I jump over to makes.powerapps.com. and so that I can create my custom connector inside of there. And I couldn't find it at first. I was like, where are the connectors? They're not where I'm used to them being. And then I went, there's like this show all. So when you go to show all, you're going to see this new application, and then you're going to see custom connectors. Do I have a little? Here. Then I'm going to see custom connectors, you know, right in here. And then I went ahead and like pinned this to my dashboard as well in Power Automate and in Power Apps, so that now I don't have to like always go to the screen to search for my custom connectors. So that's what you will start out with to start to create your flow. I'm sorry, your custom connector. And then let's see. I wonder if I can. All right. So we're gonna walk through. These are the screens, and I've got some links, and I think David's gonna share them because I won't say that it's not the hardest thing, but it's also not the simplest thing. And it's definitely not something that we can walk through in like a super simple time. So I'm going to high level talk about this, but there are some super great documents online and some links that we're going to drop here for y'all to use. And then if you've not checked out Anders Jensen, I'm not sure if I'm butchering his last name, but he's phenomenal. And he's got a really, really great YouTube video that gives some good documentation that'll help you create this ChatGPT custom connector as well. But basically, the first step whenever you're creating a custom connector is to what I'll call brand it, right? So what did I do? I went online. I Googled ChatGPT icon white, right? And then I put that on there, and then you can see I've got like this little hex code. And so this is the little icon that I have here. Then we have to put our host URL down here as well. And that will be listed on the documents and the links as well. But I think it's, what do I have here? It's openai.com, https platform.openai.com. And so that's what we put in the first screen there, right? That's just kind of getting it ready, getting it branded is what I like to call it. The next step whenever you're creating a custom connector is to add authentication, right? So if you're not familiar with authentication, that's like, what are your credentials? What are the username, credentials that you need to be able to use this API key? And that's just the same thing like if you're using like Dataverse or Business Central or anything else, right? You need to have a username credentials, and that has some associated security stuff on it. So the ChatGPT API, right, has a security set up on it as well. So we have to indicate that that it's an API key here, like we have listed, and then we're also going to identify where we're going to have that authentication of that API key listed, which will be in the header there. So then after we've created that, now we're ready to like create the what's called the definition of the API. What's the definition? So if you're familiar to Postman, right, a definition would be like if I'm going to post an API, if I'm going to post, I'm going to update, I'm going to create, right, any of those types of things where I'm going to pass in some parameters. I'm going to put in the customer name, but first I have that like JSON body, right, that you're having to work with. That's a definition, right? So if that's, your familiarity set, think of that as the definition, right? That's what you're going to put in there because you're going to say, oh, this API can post. Let me put it in a pretty wrapper. That's all a definition is there. Now, let's say your experience isn't, right, from that perspective. And you are just a straight maker from Power Automate. A definition is just going to be those actions that you can do inside of Power Automate. So SharePoint, right? That's a nice, easy connector that we're all, familiar with. When you say, create item, and it gives you those different fields that are available for whenever you're going to create an item, that is a definition. Right? So it's nothing to be scared about. I think that a lot of times people are like, oh, custom connector, custom this. And, to Norm's point, right? If we just have like a little patience and a little gumption and say, okay, it's really not that bad, right? It's just, this is how we make the things relevant to what we already know. Because I'm telling you that this skill set is nothing that anyone here can actually do. It's just, how do I know the name for this? So that's all a definition is. So you will set up that definition. You hit this import sequence here, and it asks you what the URL is. And then a lot of times when you go to the platform open API documentation references there. Sorry, I'm looking at my API over here, but I get so tongue-tied. Over there, this link that we're going to share with y'all, whenever you go there, it gives you like the JSON documentation, right? So you just copy and paste that. You just have like this little header request that you throw in there, and you set that up. So you set up your definition. So we branded it, then we set our security for it, then we created our definition, and then the last thing, we do is we go back to grab our slide. Okay, is we have this, is we're going to test it, right? So we're doing all of that. Now we're going to test it, and you're going to add, first you're going to add a connection to it. So you'll add like this new connection, and then it will do like those normal credential logins, right? That you're used to seeing, like with every other connector that you have, right? With some type of username and password for that. So that's what it's going to ask you for there, except there you will enter your API key that you get from ChatGPT, right? You go in there and you set up your, I call it developer account. And basically, right, this is kind of common if you're used to using these other external APIs. They usually have they usually have some type of developer site where you go and you get an API key that's associated for your user account, and then that's what you put in there. So you have these credentials. So then you test that, and then your flow is ready to go. Now you've created this connector, right? And so like I said, I know that that's a lot, but there's Anders Jensen creates this, like has this video. I think the whole video is 12 minutes long. He's more efficient than I am as far as explaining. And so I highly recommend you check that out if you want to create a little custom connector there. Now, what I decided, I was like, cool, I definitely want to use this in a flow. And because I am what I would call an ERP junkie, right? Like I just love to automate these processes. So I was like, cool, I want to take some of my Business Central data and run it through ChatGPT and have it do like some forecasting and analysis. And I was like, that's going to be so exciting. I'm so excited to do this. And so I spent all this time, I spent probably like 30, 45 minutes creating my little custom connector. And then I was like ready to go. And then I was like, wait, well, first I was like, wait, there's an issue with this because this is what we call something like responsible, AI. And I realized that in my business case scenario for this connector, like how I would normally use it, I didn't want to send what I will call private or ERP data through ChatGPT, which is this open AI source, right? Because then, like, let's say for me, it's just test data. But like, let's say this was like maybe one of my customers, like super, super private, hot, like customer list that they don't want anyone to get, right? And I'm now like saying, okay, take all of their customer financial data and let's throw that out into the internet. And I was like, that's not a good idea. That's a terrible idea, actually. So I had to then actually reshift the way that I was going to use this for my ERP scenario. So I say ChatGPT for ERP, honestly, with like this asterisk and some warning labels. And I realized that after I was like gung-ho excited going down the lane there. So what I decided to do instead was use ChatGPT. When I was like, okay, well, I know that one of the things that my, customers often have issues with is like, how do I do this in Business Central? Like, I don't remember, right? How do I post a journal? How do I, reverse a payment, right? Like that type of same scenario, like we kind of forget. So I was like, okay, let me just see a safe way, because all of that documentation is freely available online, right? That's our Learn documentation. There's tons of blogs. There's tons of, what I would call external facing, not customer client, credential information that I can have it go out there and get. So I kind of put this like little screen inside Business Central that said, okay, I can ask, my ChatGPT information from inside Business Central and then post that to like a Teams message. So that was the route that I ended up kind of deciding to go upon so that we could be what I will call like responsibly safe with AI. And this results back to kind of the scenario that we call, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. could I have taken this instead of just putting some type of question? Could I have ran my customer data, through here and essentially ran, an entire table? That would be the same as like saying, okay, I've got this table. I could copy and paste that table and put it right into Chat GPT, right? And say, do magic, tell me something, right? And it would, but then I would expose all of that data. So this is, like I said, a scenario where I say just because you can doesn't mean you. I'm not sharing my screen anymore. Have I never been sharing my screen?
No, you were sharing. I think something happened.
Okay.
Looks as on my end. But we are
No
wrapping
problem.
into the next demo time. If you are able to. There we go.
We'll go ahead and just stop it there then. Yep, we're good to go.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Mary. And by the way, everybody, Mary was getting all this set up, and the demo demons crashed into her house last night, and some of her demo was not working perfectly. So she backed up to slides, and it was fantastic. So thank you, Mary, for being a trooper and still charging through that. You rock. Really appreciate it. Okay, so Dian Taylor has jumped in for us today to provide a demo on creating content with D365 PVA and automate the digital hat trick. Take it away. You're muted.
There we go.
Dian,
That would help.
There we go. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, Mary. I wanted to be ready to start sharing, but then unfortunately I hit the wrong button. So didn't mean to do that. I apologize.
No problem.
So,
no problem.
So anyways, today I'm going to show you some very interesting content using Dynamics 365, Power Virtual Agents, and Power Automate. So I'm going to get right into it. Just want to introduce myself real quick for you guys who don't know me yet. My name is Dian Taylor. I'm actually a director, excuse me, here in pre-sales at RSM. I'm also a LinkedIn Learning author. I have about 4 courses, I think, out there right now, and you can follow me on all the links that I have posted on here. And I'm also a Microsoft MVP as well. So I'm going to jump right in because we don't have that much time left. Right, this is what we're going to be talking about, using Power Virtual Agents and customer service and Power Automate all combined. And I want to talk a little bit about the scenario. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you how a customer can initiate a chat, right, with Power Virtual Agents, and then following some prompts, answering some questions from PVA, and then PVA is actually going to automatically create that case in Dynamics 365 customer service. Now, just to kind of show you here what I've set up here, I actually have on the screen, as you can see here, a custom category and subcategory field. Those are actually tied to a table. The way that this works is we can select a category, and then the subcategory options that are going to be available when agents are creating these cases depend on what is actually entered in that category field. So as you can see here, right, this is my drop-down value table, right, where I have a product issue, and then below here you see all of those subcategories. So that's how it works, and I kind of wanted to tell you about that because otherwise the whole thing I'm going to show you is not going to make sense. So let's go into the scenario here. So I'm going to have a customer, right, that initiates the chat with Power Virtual Agents. Then Power Virtual Agents is actually going to use Power Automate to get that list of categories, right? It's going to feed that back to Power Virtual Agents, and then PVA is going to request some additional details from the customer, like their email address, the category that they want to pick, and a case title. Then the answers are going to go from Power Automate to from Power Virtual Agent, the other way around, to Power Automate, and it's going to check based on the email address if this is actually an existing customer. If that is the case, we're going to use Power Automate to find a customer. If that's not the case, we're going to create a customer, and after that, we're going to create a case associated to the customer inside of Dynamics 365 for customer service. All right, very quick explanation. Let me now show you how this works. So here I am in Power Virtual Agents, and I'm sure you know that you can actually have this little chat widget here on a website, right? And then people can start that chat directly from here. I'm going to show you this from inside of Power Virtual Agents so you can kind of follow along with what is happening here, right? This is my topic here on the side. So I'm going to say drop down. So I'm actually going to drop, not drop down. So I'm actually going to be going to this particular topic, and you should see that in a second. Hopefully it's been sitting here for, there you go. So it's telling me, let me get your options. And what that's going to do is, right, what I said is going to query for those categories. So my email address, I actually have an email address that is actually a person inside, there we go, a contact inside of my Dynamics 365 system. And I'm going to say, this is a test. There we go. And what is it going to do now? It's actually going to now pull in those drop-down values using Power Automate. So these are all of the options that I have in there. And by the way, since it is a table, if we are disabling or deactivating, I should say, any of those right options in that table, Power Automate will not pull them in. So that's kind of nice as well. I'm going to say these are shipping issues. What it's going to do now is it's going to grab that shipping issues option set, or not option set table, right, that value, and it's going to give me the related subcategories. And again, right, these are all related to the shipping issues category. So now I'm going to say, okay, there was damage during my shipments. Let's see what else it needs from me. I think we should be okay here. Let's just go ahead and give this a second. It's now utilizing, again, kicking off Power Automate to create that case inside of Dynamics 365. And then what it should do, there we go. It's giving me this nice adaptive card, and it's telling me, right, what is the category, subcategory, and the case has been created. So now if we go here to my cases inside of Dynamics 365, I actually have a view that shows cases that were created today. Look at that. What it did is it actually found Avery. It saw that Avery is related to an account, put that in a customer field, and look at that. It has my category and it has my subcategory as well. And then of course, if there's other data that we need to populate, we can do that as well. And that is all that I had. I know it was really quick, but I kind of wanted to make sure to give David a couple of minutes to close as well. So again, feel free to follow me, take a look at my my website or my YouTube, or connect with me on LinkedIn. And thanks again, everybody.
Awesome, Dian. That was like lightning fast. I think you earned an award for speed there. So excellent job, and still showed all the value to it. So thank you very, very much. All right, everyone. Well, thank you to all of our presenters for the day. We really appreciate everybody stepping up. We know that there was some hurdles today, but everybody got through it, and we really appreciate you all bringing the energy and bringing the passion to our community. We've got some resources for you. So if you've got any questions for our presenters today, we absolutely welcome you to talk to them. And in fact, we've made it easy. All you need to do, go to any one of these URLs. I will put them in the chat afterwards, but our community conversations forums are alive and well. Even if you just go let them know you appreciated what they presented on today. That is a contribution, everybody. It is not hard work, or it's not easy work, I should say, to always present on these calls. And sometimes things come up, like happened with Mary, and Dian stepped in the last minute. So we really appreciate, just go say thank you. That is a way to contribute and give back to the community. So please definitely do that. We've got some other resources available for you as well. Our community front door, as well as our videos and samples, our Power App community automate pages, Power Virtual Agents, where you can go chat with other like-minded individuals in the community and ask questions and get answers. So definitely take advantage of those. And of course, we've got more community calls for you. And that's a mistake. The call is back from summer break for the M365 Power Platform. I did not notice that, but we will get it fixed. It is back every Tuesday. We've got Microsoft presenters showing you the amazing things that are being done within our organization that you'll be able to take advantage of. Then we've got our monthly Power Platform call, which you are on now, Office Add-ins, and along with our bi-weekly M365 and Power Platform Community Development call, and Viva Connections and SharePoint Framework. You can get access to all of these at ak.ms/community/ calls. So definitely go get those invites added to your calendar so that you can be part of all of them. They all worth it, I promise. Now, we've also got an opportunity for you to collaborate with other cool kids in the community that are on Discord. This is something we've set up for the community that you can come in and kind of have a one-stop shop to see all of the different things that we're doing, chat with other like-minded individuals as well, and get involved there. Lastly, we would love to get your feedback on these calls. Please let us know what's going right, what's going wrong, what you'd like to see more of. These absolutely help us ensure that our management understands the value of these calls that are brought to you each month and each week. So please, even if you fill it out, let us know again that things are still working, that you like it, or what may you want to see improved. Okay, so we really, really appreciate it. The recording will be available in 24 hours on the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform Community YouTube channel. Go subscribe at aka.ms/community/videos to all of our YouTube channels. You're going to get told in Teams that the video is ready for download. It's a little liar. Unless you're a Microsoft employee, you might be able to access it. So go subscribe. YouTube will let you know as soon as it's available, or you can follow us on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, for updates at M365PNP, and you can also see all that we've got at ak.ms/community/li. We look forward to the next community call. I'm sure it's after the conference, so we'll have plenty of cool things to show off. Definitely go get that on your calendar if it's not already, October 18th. We look forward to everything that you guys are bringing to the community, so we really appreciate it. Please have a great rest of your day, a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll see you in the community.